Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're tuning in. Now that I've got my voice back, I don't have to sound so terrible on the mic. Uh, this is another episode of Backyard Buckets. We're coming to you live post All-Star break. We're going to talk a little bit of power rankings. We'll talk a little bit of All-Star game. There's been a little bit of breaking news, unfortunate breaking news for the NBA. We'll get to all that in just a moment. Bentley, how you doing, man?
Good. I'm in the midst of a polar vortex without the precipitation, so that really sucks. And given the locale of my house, it is extremely windy. So, loving life.
Yeah, right on the water is not the place to be in a polar vortex. That's for sure.
It's not great. The river.
Ryan, how are you doing? Ryan, how are you doing, man? I know you're snowed in a little bit down there, but how are things otherwise?
They're all right. I've been worse. I've been a lot better too, but I'm worse. We're surviving the snow. It's clearing up now, so
yeah, for sure. Well, real quick, All-Star Weekend just happened. There's been a lot of mixed reviews from folks since then. Bentley, you and I talked a little bit today about or maybe it was yesterday when I was in. I'm not often in 2 days in a row, so
it was like a holiday.
Yeah, right. But anyway, we talked a little bit about the fact that there was like 43 minutes of basketball action over the course of a 3-hour show. I know they were doing tributes. I know they were trying to make it entertaining. I know it was a new experience. The NBA is going to learn from it, etc. But I just want to get your takeaway from All-Star Weekend. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the changes? And how do we feel about the revival of All-Star Weekend going forward? Is it going to happen, or are we at a little bit of kind of like a pivot point where the NFL was a while back when the Pro Bowl really just kind of lost all meaning? Are we kind of getting there with the NBA?
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to have so I had trepidations going in, right? But I was trying to go in with an open mind, and the 42 minutes of basketball over a 3-hour block kind of killed that for me. 2 hours of Kevin Hart. Probably really funny if he's doing a stand-up special, but not great on like a NBA All-Star Weekend. I'm not going to be totally negative, right? I told you, Gary, when I saw you that I'm out. And I probably am. Let's be honest here. Like, I probably just will not watch the All-Star game specifically. I did enjoy the Elam ending version of the games. The more I see it in action, which is not very often because not many places do it, right? The more I see it, though, the more I have come to enjoy it, right? And I understand that, it's a monumental shift if they were to implement it into the league, and it affects the record books and all of this stuff. And people like Ryan will probably care more about that stuff than I do. Even though I care about the history of the game, and I respect the history and the records and all of that stuff. I get it. But the Elam ending just it's a significant boost to the ends of these games. And it's something that I would love to see implemented like in the college game, right? As like kind of a proving ground maybe for the NBA, and then eventually the NBA adopts it. But like we get to the ends of these games, and we've talked about it before. It's review this, review that, free throw line here, commercial break, free throw line, review this, review that. And it takes all the flow out of the end of the game. And that's not necessarily the case with an Elam ending. Plus every single game ends on a game winning shot. So it just adds a little more excitement. I think it flows better at the end of the games. I did appreciate that about this All-Star Weekend. I wish they had not played to 40. I make it 2 teams and make them play to 85. Add a little bit of actual back and forth basketball. This just looked like they were playing a 5-on-5 scrimmage game in a practice.
Yeah, 40. I agree. 40 didn't feel like enough. I get it because there's 4 teams. I agree with you. If we go 2 teams, maybe we'll go to 100, right? Make it a round number, whatever you want. But 40 doesn't feel like enough. Ryan, dissenting opinion here. Did you think that the NBA maybe found something that they can manipulate and massage going forward to revive All-Star Weekend, or are you kind of in the same boat? You're out, or just less interested?
I'm glad that you brought up the Pro Bowl, because my exact thought was like, this is not any better than any other sport. So I don't know why we're decrying the like as if the All-Star game has suddenly turned bad. You know, I actually, this is from a meta perspective, from a macro perspective, the All-Star game was designed in every sport because it was very difficult to see those players, right? If you watch 50s to the 80s, tape delay, you'd be lucky to watch a handful of games a year, maybe once a week, right? There'd be like a Friday night television game. Football, maybe you'd watch your local team, but you can't see anybody else. Same with every major sport had this issue, right? And it's like All-Star game was the way. It's like, hey, we're going to show everybody all at once. And of course, if you're first time All-Star in the 70s and no one's ever seen you play before, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna go out and go. All of these guys have like contracts with every company in the world. Like you can watch everybody on League Pass now. Even if you don't, social media covers basically every single one of these players, right? If you're an All-Star, you're being covered. At least, I mean, Tyler Hero would get no coverage in the 60s. People would not know who Tyler Hero was. I know who he's a basketball player. They could not pick him out of a crowd back then. But now it's like, I see that dude all the time. Like, I'm glad he made it, but like, I don't care. Like, I don't need to see anything interesting. So it's kind of an effect of both the marketing side changing so much with the way of the game, and also the players, the effect that has on the players and how they think about the game, right? Because it doesn't benefit you to do anything in this game, right? You've already capped out your maximum possible benefits of exposure, right? Like they're way past that. But I will say the things I do enjoy about the All-Star game is the history part. As y'all probably know, I'm always excited when they're like, let's talk about Rick Barry a bunch, right? Because they were in Golden State, or talking about the Warriors, even Run TMC. I cared less about that because Rick Barry was way better player than anybody in Run TMC. But I like that stuff. Talking about guys who have passed away recently. They announced the Hall of Fame finalist during All-Star Weekend. No one watches any of these things, but I like all of that stuff. The game, I actually disagree with Draymond about not having the Rising Stars there. I thought that was some of the highlights of the actual gameplay was the Rising Stars. Yeah, they were BSing a little bit, but they're also all like 22 and younger. So, like, of course, they're going to BS a little bit. But I thought they played relatively hard. The G Leaguers looked like they wanted to show something, right? Leonard Miller, y'all know I love Leonard Miller, looked like a stud out there. I'm hoping he gets minutes just because I was excited to see him. I loved him in the draft, as y'all know. I think that's really interesting, like the exposure that comes with those guys. And that kind of follows my point from the beginning. Those guys have almost none, right? Like, who was the most famous guy in Rising Stars? Like Amen Thompson, maybe. Jaime Jaquez. Like, there's 3 or 4 guys that people know, but most of those guys.
Castle. Probably
Stephon Castle.
He won an NCAA championship last year and plays on the same team as Victor Wembanyama and Chris Paul.
Yeah, he's one of them, right? There's like 4 or 5 guys. Contest. Yeah, he might have had the best All-Star weekend out of anybody, but and has been playing well in the actual NBA. So, but again, like 80% of those guys, there's almost no exposure for, right? People don't know who they are, so we see that. I would rather just see more of that. Make it as gimmicky as possible. Buy into the gimmick, and not in like a campy way like they're doing. I like the Elam ending, but just realize this is not a real game. Like, don't try to embrace it as a real game. Realize it's not a real game. Showcase the skills. And if you're going to try to do the legitimate thing where you're like, this is a real thing, you have to force the players. You have to find a way to force them to do it, right? You're going to have to force them in the dunk contest, force them in the 3-point contest, which 3-point has way more star power than dunk has for the last couple of years because that's a skill everybody has now. So, and it's relatively safe. Skills challenge, put those guys in the skills challenge. I'd rather them embrace the gimmicky side, focus on the history, focus on the up and coming guys, do their little presentation of you made the All-Star team, and then just kind of call it a day. But there's no money in that, so they probably won't do that. But that's kind of how I feel about it. I agree, it's reached the level of irrelevance that a lot of other All-Star games have reached.
Yeah, for sure. the hockey's got the Four Nations thing this year. I don't know how you can port that over to basketball. I don't know if that would even really move the needle for these guys. But yeah, gimmicky, something to just show me how much better of an athlete. Show me how much more superhuman these guys are than like I am, right? Show me what they can do that I could never even think of doing on a basketball court. Make it a game of horse where everybody's got to shoot from the logo or deeper or something, whatever. Do something to change it up, and let's lean into it, and then have like the Rising Stars game where you can showcase those guys, make the NBA players coaches, or make them maybe it's like 4 Rising Stars and an NBA player at any given time, and you just rotate them and they only got to play 3 or 4 minutes and you don't run the risk of getting hurt, that sort of thing. Something to just let the 3 games that I watched on Sunday were really just not it. The finals was the most anticlimactic basketball. Even with the Elam ending, it was like there was no drama to it or anything like that. So I agree with both of you. I agree with Ryan. Like if it's gimmicks, if it's something, let's start moving the needle and make it exciting in some form or fashion, and then just pay homage to the history of the game, but pay homage to the guys that are the best in the game that were voted in by the fans, and let's move on. You mentioned money, Ryan, real quick. The All-Star games of the past were also a way for people to get paid more money too. They made $50,000 a year and they got paid $75,000 to play in the Pro Bowl in the NFL. Like famously, guys in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, like they made more going to the Pro Bowl than they made throughout the course of the season if they made the Pro Bowl. It's just not that way anymore. You mentioned all the money that's in TV, all the contracts. We're about to have $100 million contract, $100 million a year contract in the near future in the NBA. So you can't dangle that carrot of money like you used to be able to.
It's actually a good idea, Gary. I first want to say, please don't bring out Mr. Beast ever again. As a person who's terminally online, I understand people think that's funny to have a terminally online person on TV, but we're not good in front of the camera. He was god awful. He acted like it was a YouTube video for 8-year-olds, and I know the 8-year-olds probably got excited to see him, but it was a waste of everybody's time. Glad that guy won $100K though. That moment exactly was fun. Mr. Beast had nothing to do with it. I think this, you made me think of a good idea, Gary. What you do is you say, we will give all of your rookie contract players and two-way players on your team $100,000 if your team wins the All-Star game. And then they're accountable to their teammates.
I like that. And that's a substantive amount of money for guys on those deals.
And what do they say about the in-season tournament? They go, I want to win it for the guy who's a two-way guy. They always say that. They've said it for 2 years, right? Like Giannis has said it multiple times. Like, I can look at my two-way guy and say, hey, we won it for you, right? Yep. So you can, like, buy your mom a house or whatever. Perfect opportunity here. You can just do that again. You don't have to make it as big. You can make it, like, smaller, right? Like 50K a player or whatever. But it's an option. It's not that expensive. Like, how many? What are we talking? Like 3-4 million total? Like, it's not that much money.
Drop in the bucket.
Yeah, I would, if that. So that, first off, that's an awesome idea. I love that idea. I would pay so much money if that idea had been implemented for this year to be at the next James family dinner when Bronny has to confront his dad about not playing in this year's All-Star game. And announcing it right before.
Yeah.
Dad, you cost me $100,000. I want you to know.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh man,
that is funny.
Hilarious. Oh,
God.
all right.
Well, I need that to happen.
Well, in other news, we had a suspension happen. Bobby Portis doesn't move the needle for a lot of people, but he's a pretty big role player on that Bucks team. Suspended for 25 games. So they'll be without him. Bentley mentioned Kyle Kuzma going to get a lot more run here. Probably a good thing they made that trade now that they're going to be without Bobby Portis, despite the fact that they may not be a real player in terms of competing for the East or a championship. Any thoughts on the Portis thing real quick? I'll go Ryan, you first. Any kind of takeaways from it? It's just kind of an interesting thing, but
I think it hurts Milwaukee a lot. They play him a lot. I think too much at the 5. They play him a lot. Like it's like when they go small, they play him a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously has like always been a 6-man candidate or, you know, a spot starter, like a very important contributor to their championship team. You know, has some of the coolest eyes in the league, just gigantic. I feel bad if the story is true that it was a mistake on like, you know, the classic, I made a mistake of, you know, mixed up drugs or whatever. Like, I feel bad for him. It's just the way the cookie crumbles there. But it hurts Milwaukee, right? A team that's trying to position themselves probably around the 3 seed, right? That's where they probably want to try to be with the top 2. They want to be right under those top 2 Eastern Conference teams where, you know, they can avoid them in the first round. So I don't think it is like they're losing 5 games now, but they probably lose a game or 2 off of this more than they would have in the same amount of time, right?
It makes a big difference when you're 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 in the East trying to nip tuck your way up the standings there. And yeah, you hate to feel this way, but like we hear this far too often from folks like, oh, I mixed up drugs, like the whole tainted beef thing, and then Richard Sherman gets a dude fired to try to fucking beat a clear positive test. Like, it's hard to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll give Bobby Portis a little more benefit of the doubt than others because I like him, but it's hard to be like, oh man, like you're a professional athlete, you should be paying a lot closer attention. If it's true, it sucks, but also if it's true, like you should be paying more attention to what goes in your body. Bentley, any thoughts on Bobby Portis?
Yeah, I just can't believe that John Calipari didn't come out with a statement against the NBA saying, hey, one of my Arkansas Razorbacks is now being suspended for a mix-up. This is bullshit. As someone who's contributed more dollars to any NBA player than any other coach in the world, this is bullshit that one of my Arkansas Razorbacks is being suspended. No, it sucks for him if, like Ryan said, if it's true and it was just an accident. You know, famous accidents over time. Peyton Manning's wife ordered steroids, and Peyton Manning accidentally
he was recovering from a neck surgery.
Yeah, like simple mix-ups like this happen all the time, and it's very unfortunate for the players. That being said, this ties directly into your thought on All-Star Weekend. Show me how super athletic these guys are. Let them do all the steroids. LeBron has done it for 7 years now.
Yeah.
Nobody says anything to him.
Yeah, show me how superhuman we can be, for sure. That's a regimented HGH treatment.
Why not?
We'll be dunking in the rafters.
WWE has done it for decades, and they're one of the most profitable entertainment companies in the world. Like,
no, Vince McMahon has said, honest man, Vince McMahon has said they do not do that. A man who has never done anything dishonest in his life.
Never told a lie in his life.
Never committed a crime.
Never.
One of the worst people in entertainment.
Not culpable of nepotism whatsoever.
Yeah.
2 things he and LeBron have in common. Never been accused of nepotism.
Never.
That's true.
All right.
Stephanie McMahon running things on her own merit.
All right, let's shift gears. We have some sad news to report. One of the fastest of the rising stars in the league, Victor Wembanyama, is going to miss the rest of the season with deep vein thrombosis. And in my caption, I'm marked safe from it. But it is something that normally, we've talked about this a little bit today, and it forced me to do some research because I thought I had heard things like this affected taller and bigger people, but it usually impacts older people, 60 and over, maybe Vic 65, maybe. I mean, a lot of baseball players lie on their birth certificates. Maybe we got a basketball player that did, but it's in his shoulder, which is odd for tall people because it usually impacts their legs, the veins in their legs, because of the stress put on their legs, because of how tall or how big they are. It's a very, very odd injury, and I'm going to save Bentley for last because he is the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to having his finger on the pulse of things in San Antonio. So I'm going to go to Ryan first. Talk to me about Vic. Talk to me about the injury. Talk to me, well, I guess the affliction. I don't know if it's necessarily an injury, but Vic's done for the year. should make a full recovery, right? All indications are like there's treatment and it's going to be fine, and he's just going to have to manage it going forward. But we're missing Vic for 30 games here down the stretch, and we won't see him again until next NBA season. So talk to me about impact here, what it means for the Spurs, what it means for the NBA, and what it means for Vic going forward.
What it means for the Spurs, probably, I hate to say good for them, as far as like their long-term, outside of his development, right? You obviously want to keep getting him developed, but it might be good. They can kind of, thanks, Dad. They want to level set, kind of figure out where they are with all these other players, right? Because they're still like some guys they're probably not still 100% sure about. Where does Keldon Johnson fit into this, right? Those types of guys. And then, Stephon Castle, this will affect everybody positively that's left, right? Even all the way down to the guards, funnily enough, just how it works. More minutes become available for everybody. So I think it's good. They'll probably get a higher first-round pick now because of it. They won't be trying to push for the playoffs more than likely. I don't know why they would in that situation. For him, obviously it hurts. I don't think it's something that we expect to see a lot of, right? I'm not an expert, but it doesn't seem like it's something that they expect to keep having problems with. So that's good. It's not like everybody when he was drafted was like his knees are going to fall apart, we're not seeing that, which is good because he's been relatively healthy, right? This is just a kind of a weird one that doesn't affect his ligaments or anything like that, as far as I could tell. And the NBA, who are the worst people about advertising all of these international players that should be making them so much money, and they're just not great at it. It doesn't hurt them that much because they're bad at it. So, if they were good at advertising, Wemby would be up there with SGA and those guys, and they don't advertise him either, funnily enough, most of the time. The NBA, it's kind of a wash to them, but I think it's mostly positive for the Spurs being able to kind of figure out what they want to do.
Yeah. So in that vein, Bentley, positive for the Spurs. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, as best I understand, again, not a doctor here. You said it's an oddity, this injury. I agree. It's a clotting issue, right? Essentially. And we usually see it in older people because as you get older, your heart gets weaker. And the issue is it's a circulation issue, right? Blood gravity will pull blood down to the legs, which is where we usually see this happen. But if the heart is not strong enough to continue that pump, the blood will clot in the veins going back up, which adds to the oddity of what is happening here because one, he's 21 years old, 20 years old.
Allegedly.
And it's in his shoulder, which is very close to the heart.
Yeah.
And he's extremely healthy, he's in great shape, so he should have no circulation issues. Just a weird set of circumstances here. That being said, I put out a PSA on this show the show before, and I said, hey, anybody not named the Washington Wizards, stay the fuck away from Cooper Flagg, all right? Stay away from Cooper Flagg.
Somebody didn't get that fucking message.
It might be an odd thing for me to bring back up, but for those here old enough to remember the Tim Duncan draft, the Spurs suffered a catastrophic season-ending injury the year prior to one David Thompson.
Robinson.
The Admiral David Thompson.
Robinson,
David Thompson.
Also a Hall of Famer, to be fair.
Yeah. David
Just
Robinson.
20 years earlier.
Yeah. And what ended up happening the year after that David Robinson injury? Well, we had a scandal where there was a frozen envelope, allegedly, back when they used to put all the names and spin the thing, and the commissioner would stick his hand in the box and pull out an envelope. And which envelope did he pull out for the number 1 overall pick, who ended up being, I believe, 2-time ACC Player of the Year, Tim Duncan, out of Wake Forest? It was the San Antonio Spurs. Well, the trade deadline just passed, and we talked about how good of a job the Spurs did and holding on to a lot of their assets. I believe they have 9 future first-round picks or 9 future picks in total within their war chest, including this year's Atlanta pick and this year's San Antonio pick. So Atlanta, they were sellers at the trade deadline for the most part. Their best player, Jalen Johnson, is on the shelf for the entire season. And now San Antonio's best player ends up on the shelf for the rest of the season. It would lead one to believe that the San Antonio Spurs are angling to move themselves into the lottery with not 1, but 2 first-round draft picks available to them this year.
Yeah, because importantly, you mentioned the Hawks pick. No protection.
No protection, which means if that Atlanta Hawks pick is sealed inside of a frozen envelope and Adam Silver sticks his hand into the box and grabs the frozen envelope and it says Atlanta Hawks, guess who gets that pick and gets the rights to draft one Cooper Flagg? The main event, if you will, Cooper Flagg. That would be the San Antonio Spurs. But if Adam Silver reaches his hand into that box and pulls out the frozen envelope that says San Antonio Spurs, guess who gets to draft Cooper Flagg with that number 1 overall pick? The San Antonio Spurs. So I'm not going to say that they are lying about this affliction, as you call it. What I will say is that given the level of stress put on the body at All-Star Weekend, we all just spoke about how kind of farcical the competition is there. Would you not assume that they knew about this going into the weekend? And they just they were like, oh, we're managing it. He's still able to play. Go have fun in San Francisco. And then when you come back, we'll shelf you for the season. It's just an odd series of events. And you take all of these events and you pair that with who is the coach of the San Antonio Spurs? Greg Popovich, the father of load management. He taught the league how to load manage when he had 3, soon-to-be 4 future All-Stars on his Hall of Famers on his roster, and Manu, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Kawhi Leonard. They were constantly sitting out games. He would send Tim Duncan home from the airport to not even travel on road trips, like 3-game road trips. He'd be like, you know what, Tim? We're good. You stay here. And he did the same with Manu and Tony as their careers progressed. So it's just a little odd, if you ask me, that they have an unprotected Atlanta pick and they have their own first-round draft pick, and this is a loaded NBA draft class, right? It's not just Cooper Flagg. There's a number of guys that are playing on Tuesdays and Fridays and Saturdays and every day of the week, right, in college basketball. You can watch them that are coming into this draft that any team in the league would be lucky to get their hands on, right? Yeah. And the Spurs now get 2 cracks at not only lottery picks, but number 1 overall picks. It's just an odd thing that I'm keeping my eye on.
Convenient.
Very convenient.
Are we now adding conspiracies? That's a new conspiracy.
Well, no, Gary said that I'm the number 1 pulse haver of the city of San Antonio. I would just like to add myself into the same bucket as Charles Barkley. He and I, same affinity for the city of San Antonio.
Ryan, any dissenting thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're combining the Patrick Ewing lottery conspiracy to the Tim Duncan lottery conspiracy.
All of the above, whatever it was.
Because famously, the Spurs were a big franchise that they wanted to make a lot of money off of the famous large city of San Antonio. I'm not sure I believe in those conspiracies, but the Patrick Ewing one is funny with the frozen envelope. But the lottery will go as it goes.
Did I get those players wrong?
No, you didn't.
It was the David Robinson injury.
Ewing
right?
was the first time where there was alleged collusion.
The first ever lottery was Patrick Ewing.
Sure.
And people said, oh, how did the Knicks win it? And what they did was they put it in a big wheel and
they spun it around. Yeah.
They stopped doing that because of that conspiracy. So it would be frozen ping pong ball, I guess.
Look, you can never, if I've learned anything in this life, it's you can never let the facts get in the way of a good conspiracy theory. Okay.
I mean, I agree. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. I mean, that's what's important. That's narrative is more important than fact. But,
that's what my dad taught me.
Right. Yep. No, I don't think this is a concerted plan by the Spurs to necessarily get the first pick, but probably to get a better pick. I mean, let's say they miss the lottery. What do they get? They're right at the end of the lottery. They get like a 2% chance at the first pick. And then with Atlanta, they have like another 2% if Atlanta doesn't make the playoffs, right? So we're talking 4%. I guess they're doubling their odds, which is good, but it's still a long way to go. No team has great odds, though. The best odds you can have is what, 12.5?
Yep,
Yeah,
12
they
and a half.
changed that to.
And it's the top
That's
five.
correct,
All. It's just the floor is higher. So you can, like, if you're the first pick, your floor is the fifth pick.
Yeah, for sure.
So, don't believe in conspiracies, but I'm glad to hear a new one. NBA doesn't have enough of them.
I know this looks like a fleece hat, but it's actually tin foil.
Yeah, the NBA is ripe with conspiracies, that's for sure. All right, let's shift gears. Let's get to the main topic we came here for tonight. Let's talk power rankings, and we'll go backwards from 10 to 1, and I'll keep track of all of them so we can kind of run down the list at the end and get everybody caught up. But we're at kind of the de facto halfway point of the NBA season. I know we're well beyond that in terms of number of games, but the All-Star break, just like in baseball, it comes later in the season, but it's sort of like the halfway kind of feeling out. Now we get into the crux of pennant chases or, playoff chases in the NBA. So let's start with number 10. And Bentley, I'm going to go your way first. Who's number 10 on your list in power rankings for the NBA as it stands as we leave the All-Star break?
Okay, let me add some clarity to my list here. My list of 10 are the teams that I believe have the 10 best chances to win the NBA title.
I like that.
I did not go to Vegas and check the odds. This is just me having watched far too many basketball games this year for one body health. But these are the 10 most likely teams I think to win the title going forward. Number 10, I have Milwaukee. Gary, you and I talked today. I'm not a Giannis guy. I like Giannis the person, right? I have no reason not to like him, but Giannis the basketball player, I'm not necessarily a fan of, but I respect the level of play that he provides to a team, right? Dame, kind of a fluky Western Conference Finals run for him that year, but it still happened, right? He has the experience. We've seen him hit big shots in the playoffs. We've seen him elevate his level of play in the playoffs. As rotations close, I think that they have a talented enough duo in Dame and Giannis to make some things happen. There are some teams above them in the conference that are really, really good, but like Giannis is a freak, he's a freak for a reason. So I'm going with the Bucks at 10.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a guy that is arguably the best player in the world, right? Giannis, I think a lot of people would still say he's in that conversation at least, right? You've got a shot in the playoffs, and you got a shot to get hot at the right time, and maybe they'll get some injury luck again, and they'll go on a run. Ryan, any objections to where Bentley's got the Bucks? And then follow that up with give me your number 10.
I don't have an objection. They did not make my list. They were right on the outside. I hit a point at 9 where there was 5 teams. I had 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and I all felt they're about the same to me somewhere and I just had to make slight delineations there. I had the Pacers at number 10 is who I had, who I think are a half game up on Milwaukee. So we're talking, very similar teams. Pacers have been playing a lot better. They started off kind of meh, especially after the run they had last year. They look really good offensively, as we kind of think all expected. Halliburton has not been perfect, but is starting to kind of catch his stride a little bit. Probably not back to MVP levels anytime soon, but at least where he's going to be a top 30 guy in the league, right, consistently for the next couple of years. Pascal, obviously, very good player. They have the role players they have. I think they have a pretty interesting mix of offensive talent and like switchability. I think they're a tough playoff out because they do have that capability to kind of throw different looks at you, especially offensively different looks. But even defensively, they got a lot of length, right? Halliburton's not a good defender, but he does have a lot of length. I have them as like a top 7-ish offense and kind of a middle of the road to slightly below middle defense, which comes out to being a pretty good team. So yeah, I mean, this is really just me betting on the offense as letting them, win a series in the playoffs. I kind of did the same as Billy. This is kind of my championship tier ranking or tier list here.
Yeah, we all approached it the same in terms of who we thought right now on February 20th. It seems at least like who's got the best chance of winning the NBA championship from 1 to 10. I actually have the Pacers at 10 as well, Ryan. So sharing a brain there, a little synergy. For a lot of the same reasons, I think their offense has found some of the magic they had last year. Rough start to the season. They've actually moved into the top 10 in offensive rating. And I agree with you. I think they're closer to like 7 or 8 in the league. They're not as bad defensively as they were last year. They're still not great, but they're not as bad as they were last year. And then their pace. I like their pace, and I like their pace in a playoff series where they can wear down the opposing team. They're younger. A lot of their stars are, under 30. They're guys that can get up and down the floor, and they're guys that are going to be able to keep that pace up in a playoff series, especially if you face a team like the Celtics, right? That are a little not long in the tooth, but longer in the tooth than the Pacers are. Maybe you can kind of neutralize some of what the Pacers can do. We saw them steal game 1 last year, or almost steal game 1, and then the series kind of fell apart. They should have stolen game 1 in that series. So for me, I'm on the Pacers, and as Ryan mentioned, like from 8, 9, 10, like there were 6 teams ish that I was kind of who's in, who's out, that sort of thing, rack and stack. So I've got the Pacers at 10. Bentley, objections to that?
No, I understand y'all's logic and reasoning there. I also like the Pacers a lot. Halliburton, one of my favorite guys to watch in the league. He plays with, most people will say pace. I like to say tempo, because his pace is not always fast, but he was always in control of his pacing. If I could steal a golf term there, the tempo of the game is often dictated by Halliburton, and he controls it so effortlessly. It's honestly super cool to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, who you got at number 9, man?
I first want to do want to give a shout out to Benedict Mathurin, who's had, I was going to mention him, but I just forgot about it for a second. Benedict Mathurin's been great this year as another scorer. They had a lot, but now they got another legitimate guy. I think he's averaging like 16 a game right now on pretty good splits. For a guy people thought might not be a player in the league for much longer because he wasn't super efficient
last year and then kind of faded, and he's really turned it around this year for sure.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the season, I told Bentley they needed him to. He was my guy. I was like, they need him to make a step because they need one more guy, and I think they have that. So I think that's kind of another reason I put them out there. But for number 9, I have the T-Wolves. Kind of the exact opposite of Indiana. They're great defensively. Offensively, they're pretty middle of the road. You could argue even below average a lot of the time when you watch them. Their rating is middle of the road, but the benefit they have is they have an all-world offensive player. So when it comes down to it, they can rely on him, right, in the playoffs. I watched it recently where he basically single-handedly in the fourth quarter beat the Rockets, even though they were up big. It's just something he's capable of doing, right? He's capable of winning a couple games on his own. I think they could win a series off of his ability and their defensive ability. And I think Julius Randle's turned a little bit of a corner. He's looked pretty good. I know a lot of people, he's like the guy you blame everything on if you're like a T-Wolves fan, or the Lakers previous to that, or the Knicks previous to, Knicks, before the T-Wolves. It's always like, it's Julius Randle killing us because he doesn't pass the ball. Agree, doesn't move the ball, but he's looked a lot better defensively. When he's engaged, he looks pretty good. And if they can get that, I feel like they have a chance to win a series in the West and make a run, right? Because there's really one really great team in the West and a couple others that all will compete with each other to try to probably play that team in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think my only worry with the T-Wolves is Anthony Edwards has really fallen in love with the three. Now, in his defense, he leads the league in makes. But I'd much more like to see him a little more downhill than he has kind of fallen into the groove of just being a pull-up and not really a spot-up three-point shooter. As much of like in the flow of the offense, but you mentioned it, he's an all-world player and he does lead the league in makes. I just don't know how sustainable that is for the T-Wolves. Spoiler, I don't have them in my top 10. They're not in there for me. They're just outside. Bentley, what are your thoughts on T-Wolves at 9? And then give me your number 9.
Yeah, I'm with you, Gary. They were my number. They were like my flip-flop with the Bucks. I went with the Bucks because the Eastern Conference is the East. And they have Giannis, right? Like Giannis currently is a better basketball player than is Anthony Edwards. I love the point you made. I was going to make it myself, Gary, that Ant has fallen in love with the pull-up three-pointer. I equate it a lot to what Jason Tatum has done the last couple of years of his career. When he first came into the league, he had this beautiful mid-range game. Not necessarily as downhill as Ant, so like in that aspect, they're very different. Ant is like an aggressive downhill, get to the rim guy, where Tatum had the beautiful mid-range, right? But Tatum has fallen in love with the three-pointer, which he shoots at a higher clip than does Ant, right? But Ant, I believe, is trying to become that sort of player where he knows if he needs to get into his bag, he can get downhill and get to the rim, but he's working on these in-game situations of hitting the pull-up three, right? So it gives me a little bit of pause that he has fallen in love with it so much. They are a very good defensive team. Didn't help him last year in the Western Conference Finals, unfortunately. But, whatever. Maybe Ant will be better in a playoff series than he was last year. I mean, it's tough to be better than he was in that Game 7 against Denver. But, yeah, they also have a coaching advantage, I think, on most of the teams they're going to go up against. I really, really like Chris Finch. I think he's a phenomenal coach. So yeah, I have no problem with them being 9. They were right there for me as well.
Who do you have number 9?
My number 9 team is probably going to shock some of y'all, but I need to caveat my list here a little bit. It is not the Orlando Magic. I promise you that.
That's what I thought it was.
I'm placing the caveat of projected health on my list.
I think we have the same number 9.
Okay, I'm going the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, no, we don't.
Okay, I'm going the Dallas Mavericks. Jason Kidd, love Jason Kidd as a coach. I love him as a player, love him as a coach as well. There's a lot of coaches in the league that I like. Most of them are in the West, but that's okay. So I very much like Jason Kidd as a coach. I think if he is able to fix the kind of, and I don't know that he needs to fix it. If he just can like maintain the morale of this team, obviously the Luka trade is in the past, but they brought back Anthony Davis, who we have talked about on this show having his 2 most like productive / healthy years of his career, at least since he was playing in New Orleans, right? Anthony Davis, and then if you get those 2 centers back, behind him, plus you have Kyrie, plus you have Clay, who's just going to take spot ups in the playoffs. If Max Christie continues to play at a high level since they brought him over, like they have dudes on this team who they just went to the NBA Finals. Like, granted, again, you lost Luka, so that's gone, but you have Kyrie, who's not super old yet. He's a proven playoff commodity. You have Anthony Davis, who's a champion, proven playoff commodity, and you have a coach who knows what it takes to get it done as well. Like, given this team at a healthy status, that's something that nobody wants to play in the West because they have the size and they have a guy in Kyrie who's capable of playing at an all-world level in a playoff series. I get that he tailed off a little bit, like in the Western Conference Finals and in the finals last year, but it was Luka's show. Like, part of that was him not being afforded the opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, now this is going to be his offense, and he's going to be driving the bus going forward. So I really, really think that if they are healthy down the stretch of the season, that's a team that nobody is going to want to play.
I like your justification for it. I worry a lot about AD's health. I also worry a lot about kind of the impact in what Luka brought to that team last year that they don't have this year. It does depend on Kyrie's got to be that guy, right? If he's that guy, then I think that levels a lot of what they lost with Luka and what they gained with AD. I think you can level that off if Kyrie is that guy in a playoff series. Ryan, your thoughts on the Mavs?
I didn't have them in the top 10. I didn't feel as comfortable projecting them. I don't disagree with the logic. Like they were probably the top of my next tier, where it's kind of the mystery tier, I guess. Like, is this a legitimate contender, right? Because I probably have them like 13, 14, because I really went out to about 13 was where, and I think they were just below that, so probably like 14-ish. But would not shock me if they win a series, and even two, right? Like with the experience they have, and I like the surrounding talent on that team. I just don't know what it's going to look like, and it is hard for me to project. And I think I'm still enraged at the owners from the last show. So I don't think I could, in good conscience, say they made a good decision in the short term after that. I'm very biased, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Self-awareness is key.
I wonder if Ryan has the Rockets on his list anywhere.
I do not actually.
Oh, all right.
I do not.
Interesting.
Yep, I had them just on the outside, above Dallas, but in the same ballpark.
Naturally, of course.
Interesting.
Yeah, as it should be.
My 9 is projecting health. The Clippers, not the Mavs. They're 10-5 with Kawhi Leonard in the lineup this year, and they're outscoring opponents by 17 points per 100 possessions with him in the lineup. They're number 2 in the league in defensive rating, and they haven't had him for a lot of the season. That's a team that, led by James Harden and led by a like surging Norman Powell, who's shooting, I think it's his highest career true shooting percentage. It's like 65%, something crazy. He's been unbelievably effective this year. I wouldn't have expected to see them as good defensively this year, but they have been good, and they've been great when Kawhi is in the lineup defensively. Now, of course, projecting health. He has rested plenty this year, so hopefully that means he'll be healthy and ready to go. And we saw what a healthy, motivated Kawhi Leonard could do with a Toronto Raptors lineup that was, not really good in a lot of places. They went out and won a championship with that roster, interrupted part of the Warriors dynasty. And I like what I've seen from them with Kawhi in the lineup alongside James Harden, who is not very efficient this year, but he's been very, very effective running that offense. And man, if Norman Powell can keep it up, they've got a pretty good 3-man offensive punch and a very, very good defensive team. Ryan, your way first. Any dissenting thoughts on me having the Clippers at 9?
No, because I have them at 8. So
me too.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess I'll get into I agree with mostly what you said. I also think they have some surrounding talent. I think the Ben Simmons addition actually does a lot for him. He looked really good in the one game he's played with them, but
it's kind of get him on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a health thing, right? Like Kawhi and like if Ben Simmons can average 12, 7, and 5 for the rest of the year, like come out, you're gonna
take that for sure.
3 steals and a block, like that's an incredible addition. Amir Coffey's been great this year, a guy who's always been solid but has stepped it up this year. A name people probably don't know, but great role player, 3-and-D guy. I think he's going to get some money this year because I believe he's a free agent next year. He'll probably get in the double digits, 15 to 20 a year, which is pretty good for him. Derrick Jones Jr., obviously a guy, that can do a lot for you with athleticism. Pick and roll has been beautiful. Zubac is having a career season because James Harden is putting him in spots to makes it easy for him. And Zubac has always had the talent. He just didn't always have the facilitator, right? He had to do a lot of it himself, hustle stuff. So yeah, I like the team. I think if that team's healthy, it's not a team you want to play in the playoffs.
Bailey?
Yeah, I agree with everything y'all have said. You kind of laid out the case. I like that Ryan hit on Zubac. Zubac reminds me of Marcin Gortat, and now he has James Harden to play the John Wall role in that offense. They have a ton of I say a ton. They have a lot of players around their superstars that are just really good players, and they have Ty Lue, who is an awesome coach. Probably one of the 5-6 best coaches in the NBA, like objectively. He has this team playing incredibly defensively, which is, like Gary said, not something we may have expected coming into the year. The health thing is that, I mean, that's the risk, right? And it's not even the Ben Simmons health, because they were good before he got there.
Yep.
That could be an added bonus if you get him on the court for long periods of time. It's the Kawhi Leonard health, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. We know James Harden is going to play. That dude's an Iron Man. He plays all the time, plays through injury. I'm not super worried about him being on the court, or not being on the court rather. But again, it is a common theme here. This is a team nobody's going to want to play in the playoffs. They have experience. They have a championship winning coach. They have like a real home court advantage now too. In the Intuit Dome, like
got out from under the Lakers shadow.
Yeah, they're playing well, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with down the stretch, I think.
Really cool new logo too.
Good job. I like their new kit.
Had a pretty good trade deadline too. The Bogdanovich trade, right? If he's healthy, like I think that's a good addition for them, because Terrence Mann and Bones Highland were just worse versions of Bogdanovich.
Bones Highland, baby.
So VCU legend. Yeah, he's huge in Richmond. They love him here, obviously. You can buy his autographs down the street. They're all over the place. But yeah. They had a good trade deadline, working on the margins and just trying to get healthy. So yeah, I think we're up to you, Gary. I think we're at your 8 since we had.
Yeah, I kind of spoiled your guys' 8. I've got the Lakers at 8. I like what I've seen in terms of when Luka and LeBron are on the floor together. I know it's not been a big sample yet, but it seems like they both have the mindset that they want to make this thing work. I think LeBron's chasing one more championship, and I think Luka sees an opportunity to be the next guy for the Lakers, and I think that those two are going to work really hard to make that work. And I think that's going to cover up a lot of the other issues that I know the Lakers have, right? They don't have a ton of size. They don't have a lot of shooting to go with them. They don't have a lot of defensive prowess on this team. I just think that when you've got two of the best players in the world on the same team, and when one of them is Luka Doncic and the other one is in the GOAT conversation, I was a little bit trepidatious when the trade got made first. I've seen in the small sample that we've seen with them on the floor together, I've seen enough that I think this is a team that nobody in the West is really going to want to play, assuming health. I know Luka's out again tonight, but I think they're load managing a bit, getting him back into shape. But we'll see going forward. LeBron, I know he didn't play in the All-Star game because he wanted to rest and make sure he's ready for the stretch run. But I'm looking at this from the perspective of, in a 7-game series, those two on the Lakers, I think, are scary in the West. I know I've been out on the Lakers the last couple of years, but I like what Luka brings to the table and kind of what those two can be on the floor together in a condensed 7-game series, especially with the way the NBA has it structured now, where you get basically 2 days off between every game. Like, you get a lot of rest in the playoffs. They're going to be able to keep LeBron fresh. And we saw what Luka could do last year with the Mavericks and taking them to the finals. Bentley, we'll go your way first. What do you think about Lakers here at 8?
They did not make my list. I understand why you put them on. It's tough anytime you have two what are going to be all-time greats in the sport of basketball on the court at the same time. It's hard to ignore that. For me, this is a next year team. I get that LeBron's going to be another year older, but Luka's entering his prime, right? So the transition should be fairly smooth between LeBron to Luka as the face of the franchise and the leader or the on-court leader of this team. They don't have enough front court size for me to really take them seriously in the Western Conference. It's just I don't see it from them this year. They're going to be super fun to watch. Gary, you and I both had them as our most intriguing team down the stretch after the trade deadline, simply for the fact that Luka is there now. So I get it. They're going to be super fun to watch, but I can't take them seriously as a championship contender. They don't have defense. They don't have any front court depth or size. I can't get there with them.
Fair. Ryan?
They're not on my list. I just same as Dallas. I don't know what to expect. I don't feel comfortable projecting them as a in the Western Conference, especially, right? Don't feel comfortable projecting them as a contender. I think all 10 of these teams are conference finals contenders, and I don't feel like the Lakers are. That's fundamentally what it came down to. They're pretty mid at everything, not great at anything. Like their defense isn't god awful. It's just not good, and probably got worse. And their offense got better, but like, is there, are they a good enough offense on their own to run over people? I haven't seen it yet. So jury's out on them for this year. I think they have a bright future. I feel like it's a team top half of the league future, but don't feel great about them this year. They're probably like 15th for me.
Sure. All right. Ryan, let's go your way. Who's number 7 on your list?
Number 7, I have, as much as I hate to say it, the Golden State Warriors at number 7. I think the Jimmy Butler trade has done a lot for them to kind of stabilize a rotation that was a little all over the place. And I think we all agreed that needed to happen. I did say whoever trades for Jimmy Butler, he'll likely destroy it on the way out. I still feel that way. But he can just hold on for this year. It's probably fine. I don't feel great about them in the future, right? But this year, I feel like that trade really streamlined kind of what they're doing. I think they'll be middle of the road defensively now, and they have 2 go-to guys offensively, and enough surrounding young talent and athleticism to make them competitive. So yeah, I think I'm betting on Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in a playoff series is kind of how I view this. Similar to the Clippers, except for they're healthy, right? Like I know they're healthy, so kind of in that ballpark for me.
Yeah, 2 things real quick. I think that's one of the biggest things for the Lakers is they don't have a lot of shooting around them. I think Luka helps with that, but also I think Luka just being as heliocentric as he can be is part of why I think in a 7-game series, that's kind of why I have them where I have them, mostly because I just think Luka is that good in terms of the gravity he can bring to a series. But any hopes for them in terms of shooting? Is there someone who's going to break out here down the stretch?
I mean, they need like DFS to be a good shooter. He's like okay most of the time. They need Luka to be middle of the road, right? He's a volume guy. He's never been a great, like, efficient guy. He just takes a lot of shots and hits them at slightly below average efficiency. If he could get that to average or above average, obviously, then you're feeling really good. Yeah. Austin Reeves, but how much is he going to have the ball in his hands now? Is he going to be a spot up guy? I think there's a lot of a jury still out, especially on the shooting for sure. But DFS can do a little bit of that for them as the off ball catch and shoot guy.
Bentley, any additional?
I mean, no, like I said, this is a next year team for me. Like they number 1 most intriguing offseason. Like, how did they build the shooting? Yeah, like how did they build the shooting and the front court depth?
Yeah.
The shooting is a problem. Nothing you could really do about it at this point, though.
Yeah, for sure. The Warriors are an interesting case for me, I think. I like that they're better defensively with Jimmy Butler, but they are very, very Steph Curry dependent. They're like 3rd in the league with him on the floor behind Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of like how good they are with them on the floor, and then they're really bad with them off the floor. I know the rotation gets longer with a guy like Jimmy Butler. I just don't know if Jimmy is what Jimmy was in Miami. And when it comes to a playoff series, I don't know that the Warriors have enough firepower to really keep up in the West. I think that's my biggest thing with them is I just this is the end of the run, and I get trying to go get Jimmy and try to extend this run, but I don't know. Bentley, what do you think about the Warriors?
So I actually messed my list up, right?
Uh-oh.
And I'm adjusting it on the fly.
All right.
So I technically technically I have the Warriors in this spot. I have them at 7.
Okay.
What I did was my original list has the Clippers at 6, not 8. I just got excited that everybody said the Clippers, and I'd already typed it out on Ryan's list, so I just went, oh, me too. I had them
Okay.
at 6.
Okay. Who do you have at 8?
I have the Rockets at 8.
Okay, we can talk about the Rockets in a moment. Talk to me
Yeah.
about the Warriors.
We'll talk about. I'll give you my Warriors piece though. Ryan said it. Betting on Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry in a playoff series. Steph Curry not having a quote unquote typical Steph Curry year, but he's old, right? He's basketball old at this point. Those ankles have a lot of miles on them. He's at risk of DVT, unlike Gary, because his arms are over his head so often just from shooting jumpers. He hits a ton of shots up. He leads that team. He makes everything go. You know what I mean? That being said, Jimmy Butler, if he could just kind of ride out the rest of the season, I don't want to see him in a playoff series because I know what he's capable of. This is a guy that can flip a switch and become an absolute dog and a menace on the court. And he's a guy that can get downhill, get to the bucket, play in the paint, and he's as crafty as any guard when it comes to scoring at the rim. His footwork in the paint and his ability to pump fake and get guys in the air off their feet, like that is a very underrated skill that he possesses. And maybe at the highest level of any guy, like 6'8" or under, in my opinion. So if you tell me that guy is going to give Steph Curry the ability to play off the ball a little bit more, he's going to be attacking the paint. They're going to get Kuminga back. They're going to have Draymond Green healthy for the playoff stretch. Like, that's a team that I think is pretty dangerous. They have championship mettle in their 2 leaders with Steph and Draymond. You throw Jimmy Butler in there, who's capable of carrying a team through a playoff series. We've seen him do it twice in the last 5 years. It's a team that I would like to believe in. I think they're going to be really good come playoff time.
All right.
Pods, another year under his belt. I really like Pods. I think he's super underrated. I know you wanted to trade him away at the deadline, Gary, but they kept him. So
I need Steve Kerr to figure out how to fucking use him. That's what I need.
True.
He's been a little better this year. You have the Rockets at 8, though. Let's backtrack a little bit. You have the Rockets at 8. Talk to me about the Rockets.
Man, they are absolute dogs. Like 9 deep. Just dogs all over the court. The only thing that gives me pause about this team is they don't have a guy.
Yep.
The commonality in championship teams is that they have like a top 5-7 guy, right? Like, I don't know, down the stretch, 4.5 minutes left, down 4 points, you got to have a bucket. You just have to have a bucket. Is it going to be Jalen Green? Is it going to be Fred VanVleet running pick and roll with Şengün? Is it going to be Şengün at the high post orchestrating something? Is it going to be Jabari Smith Jr. like hitting a baseline jumper? I don't know who their go-to scoring option is late at games, and I don't think that they know it either.
It's LP hitting the dream shake.
Yeah, right. That being said, they play incredibly cohesive ball. Amen Thompson is a freaking whirlwind. He can guard any position on the court except maybe Jokic, and he might be able to guard Jokic. And when they get defensive rebounds, anybody that gets the rebound can start the break and get the ball up the court, right? So they guard really hard and they can run in transition. My issue with them is that I don't know how they manufacture points late in games without a guy they can just give the ball to and say, go get a bucket. That's my only fear for them. If Jalen Green can become that guy like in the playoffs, I think they have championship potential.
Yeah, so I have the Rockets a little higher. I actually have them at 6. I really, really, really like the way they guard the basketball. I think, as Bentley said, like 9 deep, I think they can really hit a good rotation in the playoffs. I think they're going to defend the hell out of the ball. I do worry about the fact that they don't have a guy, because that's compounded by the fact the other scary piece of it is they're like 30th, I believe, in passes, like per 24 minutes. It's crazy how little they move the ball, but they're still able to do just enough offensively to complement that defense. They rank 4th in defensive rating. They're 12th in offensive rating, but they're 20th in pace. So I think those two things complement the fact that they defend so well. Their net rating is at 7. I've got them at 6, a little higher than maybe where their net rating would indicate. But I like in the playoffs, I still think defense wins in the playoffs. And I really, really like what the Rockets do collectively on defense. They seem so connected. Really, really, they can test everything. Excuse me. And I like that in a 7-game series in the playoffs. Saved you for last, Ryan. This is your team. You said you don't have them in your list. Talk to
I
me about
don't. Yeah, I have them at 11, so they barely
Okay.
missed. Right.
Okay.
I have them in the could win a series tier.
Is that fan pessimism or?
It very well could be. It
I
very
know
well
that
could
feeling
be.
as a Commanders fan for 40
Uh,
years. Like,
I mean, we've had the worst record in the league basically 3 years before this, right? Except for last year, we were 500. But we're really bad, right? We went from really great for a long time to really bad very quickly. So maybe that's part of it. I also, I mean, I have criticisms of their ability to score when they have to. If a team just outshoots them, I mean, they just can't keep up with them 99% of the time. They have their nights where they hit everything, but they just don't have the offensive firepower to keep up with a lot of these people. And great offense beats great defense a lot of the time, right? And the West has a lot of great offenses. Jokic can single-handedly beat you on nights, right? Steph Curry can single-handedly beat you on nights, right? There's guys like that all through the West. Anthony Edwards, like I said, just saw it happen, right? And it's just they have to manufacture and work so hard for so many of their points that it can make it tough, right? Şengün has been not as efficient as I would like him to be, right? If he jumped up to his career efficiency like the rest of the season, I'd feel a lot better about the team because we're talking another 2 or 3 points a game, right? So I have a lot of concerns. I think the team is very fun to watch. I say it on the show every time. I recommend people watch them if you haven't, because they are very fun to watch. They don't play like a lot of teams do, but then there will be times where it's some of the ugliest stuff you've ever seen too. So it kind of offensively, it goes both things. They do a lot of defensive playmaking, which can win you games, steals, blocks, transition stuff. A lot of that stuff slows down in the playoffs.
Yeah.
A lot of teams lock in, right? It's harder to rile up a lot of those guys. It's harder to get it's harder to get James Harden to commit a bunch of turnovers, in a 7-game series, right? So I would like to see another guy, and I'd feel really good about him. Would it shock me if they won a series? No. Would it shock me if they went to the Western Conference Finals? Probably not, because the Western Conference, they could beat each other up, right? And they could end up getting a nice run. But they're right outside of my top 10.
Yeah, you mentioned the beating each other up. I had skipped right over this in my notes. 12-6 against the top 8 in the West. That's tied with the T-Wolves for the best record against the top 8 teams in the West. So they've shown out against those teams that they're likely going to see potentially in the playoffs. I like that a lot, but I'm really leaning on that defense with Houston when it comes to a 7-game series in the playoffs. All right. Let me make sure I know where we're at. So I need to Ryan, number 6 for you.
Wait, who's your 7, Gary?
Oh, no, you're right. I didn't give my number 7.
Who cares?
I have Memphis at 7, and this is probably the biggest turnaround in perception for me of any team in the league. I didn't know what the Grizzlies were going to look like this year. I didn't know how they were going to score enough points. I didn't know how they were going to defend well enough. I didn't know who was going to be in the rotation, because it felt like it was like, yeah, we got Ja, yeah, we got Bane, and then it was like, here's 50 other guys that we're going to, put next to Triple J and figure this thing out in the front court. But fuck, they've been good, man. And I got to give them credit where it's due. They just continue to win games despite the 36-18 right now. Top 10 in every rating across the fucking board. 5 on offense, 7 on defense, 4 net, and they're first in pace. Like, this is a very, very impressive team. And for me, like I said, I thought this was going to – I took the under on their wins. I've already lost that. I thought this was going to be like a bottom 3 team in the West, a high lottery team. They've proven me so very, very wrong on what the Grizzlies are. And they've done an incredible job there. They deserve, from the front office to the staff to what they put on the court night in and night out with the effort that they get from everybody on the floor, to be top 10 in every efficiency rating, not at all what I thought coming into the season. I'm going to put them here. I was a little tossed up on moving them up a little bit. I like the Rockets' defensive, just the way they nag and really get after people. So I have the Rockets above them. I could have put Memphis up at 5, honestly, because I had them like from 5 to 7. I was really nip tuck on kind of what I thought. So they fell here at 7. But this is a team that I would not be surprised if we're talking about Memphis playing in the Western Conference Finals this year. Ryan, we'll go your way first. What are your thoughts about Memphis?
I have them higher, so I feel pretty good. They have a lot of talent. I don't think there was any question about the amount of talent, and I mean that in quantity. They had so many guys. I mean, they got rid of Jake LaRavia, who I think is a legitimate NBA guy, and they were just like, we don't need that guy. We got to consolidate here. That's a guy I think that's going to actually do something in the league as a contributor. It was just, is the high-end talent going to play? I mean, that was always the question, right? And I don't think that question is done. It's just been fine for this year. And as constructed, I feel like it's a top 5 team in the NBA. So I think they can beat you in a lot of different ways. They have guys that can have big nights. You know, they don't have it every night, but guys, Ja Morant does not need to carry this team on his own. I don't even think he's necessarily capable of that currently. I don't think he's at that level yet, if ever. But a guy like Santi Aldama will just beat you some nights, right? Like, great personnel decisions by this team over the years. Santi Aldama is one of them, but and they got guys in the wings waiting to come in too. Like, this is a team built for the next 5 years easily. To be competitive in the West for a long time, or maybe not OKC competitive, but up there, right, in that conversation. So I just have them higher.
Yeah, one thing that separated between 5, 6, 7, where I have them, I mentioned the Rockets are 12-6 against the top 8 teams in the NBA. The Grizzlies are below 500 against the top 14 teams, and they've got they've been feasting on bad teams. Teams below 500, they're like 10 games above 500. Teams above 500, they're like 2 games below 500. So that was a little bit of a differentiator for me in terms of how they play against different levels of competition. So 5, 6, 7, that really was what separated these teams for me. Bentley, your thoughts on the Grizz?
It's a very difficult team for me to leave off my list. Any team that has Luke Kennard, G.G. Jackson, and Marvin Bagley III on it. I mean, how could I not just love that roster? I mean, that's
cock.
Yeah, like that's just depth for years. I mean, you can build around those 3 guys for the next 10 years in your programs. They were a very, very, very difficult team for me to leave off. I couldn't get them into the 10. You know what I mean? They're up there with the Pacers and the Bucks. Like, it was kind of a jumbled mess there at the end. I've seen Jaren Jackson Jr. in the playoffs before, so I know what it is that I'm getting from him. It gives me pause to think that they're going to play Zach Edey like real minutes in a Western Conference against like a Rudy Gobert or an Anthony Davis, although probably Jaren Jackson would draw that matchup, but matchups are mendable, right? You can pick your matchups at this point in the NBA. God forbid he has to play against Jokic. Like, There are just teams, if he has to chase around Chet Holmgren, how does that matchup look? Does he even play in a series against Oklahoma City? Is that more of a Brandon Clark role, or does Sante Aldama like play the 4 and they play Jared Jackson Jr. at the 5? And then Ryan made the point, despite Desmond Bain being one of my favorite like upper tier role players, I absolutely love Desmond Bain. The guy looks like he should be a running back in the NFL, or I guess at his height, probably a linebacker.
Linebacker, yeah.
Love Desmond Bain. Ja, I don't know, is like the number 1 scoring option on a championship winning team. We haven't seen him in the playoffs in a while. Like the playoffs are different. Ryan pointed it out. Teams get tighter, defenses get stronger. Like, I don't know what I'm getting from the rest of the roster outside of Jaren Jackson Jr. I know what I'm getting from him in the playoffs. I'm getting 31 minutes and 6 fouls. Like, that's what I'm getting from Jaren Jackson Jr. Maybe less.
It's been a lot better this year. He's been a top 10 guy in the league this year, in my opinion.
He's been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
He will probably win Defensive Player of the Year because Wemby's out. I like Jaren Jackson Jr. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting the talent, and
we do have some empirical evidence, though.
We've seen it. We know what it is in the playoffs. So I have no issue with them being as high on y'all's list as they are. This is why we do the show. We have differing opinions often. I couldn't sneak them into my 10 because I know what it looks like from Jaren, and I don't know what it's going to look like from Job, but I don't think that he can be the number 1 option on that type of team.
Yeah, fair enough. Ryan, you're away for number 6.
My number 6 is the New York Knicks. They are a all-world offense and a middling defense. I think we've
coached by Tom Thibodeau,
former Rockets assistant Tom Thibodeau. Yes, I remember him when he was begging to get a head coaching job right before he got the Bulls position. So he's been around a long time. I think he's a great coach. I think this is a team that can score with anybody. I think there's only maybe 2 to 3 better offenses in the league right now, and they have the star talent, and they play every game like it's the playoffs. And if they can hold that up, that's good for them, right? They run like a 7 to 8 man rotation, and they play a lot of minutes. There's the argument that their bodies will break down, but if they don't, this is a team that can match up with you pretty much in the modern NBA at every level. And Cat's been pretty good defensively too. I'll give him his credit. He's looked decent defensively. Hasn't looked like a terrible just guy to throw out there. And obviously is great offensively. So I think they can beat you in a lot of different ways offensively. And even when you shut them down, Jalen Brunson can take over, or they can shoot you out of games, right? Again, not a team I would want to play. I'd love to see an Indiana-New York series, though. I think that would be fun. That's my pitch. But yeah, all world
offense for sure. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, sometimes there's that trade-off, right? Like, you're that good on offense, it's hard to be that good on defense. Yep. Bentley, what are your thoughts about the Knicks?
I have them on my list higher than Ryan does, so I obviously like the Knicks a lot. He said it, they can score with anybody. Jalen Brunson, we've seen it in the playoffs. We know what exactly he's capable of in crunch time down the stretch of these close games. Hopefully, they don't get bit by the same injury bug that swept through Upper Manhattan last year, and half their team ended up on IR, including Brunson at the end of that series with the Celtics. The defense I don't worry about in the playoffs for the simple fact that they have individual defenders in Hart, Bridges, and OG Anunoby that I've seen defend at extremely high levels, right? They will get Mitchell Robinson back. He's got to be coming back soon. I don't know his projected return date, but it's got to be soon. If they can work him into the lineup, he's good rim defender, right? He's not the best, but he's a good rim defender that gives them some back end help to solidify things, which you need in the playoffs. So I don't worry about them defensively. Gary, you said it. It's a Tibbs team. They'll probably be fine. And their offense is, it's humming, it's clicking right now. So they're very, very dangerous come playoff time.
Yeah, I have them. Actually, they're my number 5 team. I feel very good about the Knicks. I do worry a little bit about the defense, but I think in Tibbs I trust. I think when it comes to playoff time, I think they're going to be able to put a little bit of something together. But man, they can fill the cup. And I think that for me, that in the East, you're going to have to score a lot of points because you're facing, potentially the Celtics who can score at will. And you're going to be in a little bit of a horse race with them. And then maybe potentially the Cavs who have a lot of options. So I think with the Knicks, lean on that offense and then hope that Tibbs can kind of put something together here when it comes to playoff time, because he is one of the great defensive minds in the history of the game. It's just they've constructed a roster that can score a ton. And when you do that, a lot of times you're kind of running yourself ragged potentially in one direction and not being able to necessarily stiffen up on defense. As Bentley, you've mentioned a couple of times in the playoffs, naturally things tighten up a bit, and that might be a time where a guy like Tibbs can shine with his defensive mind. Ryan, who's your number 5?
Who did Bentley have at 6? Did you say
Clippers?
The Clippers.
Oh, Clippers 6. So we know everybody's 6 already.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry. 5. I have the Grizzlies, who I already talked about. So I won't go into them anymore. But
Yep.
This top 4, I think we're gonna have some similarities.
Yeah.
I would assume so.
Bentley, who's your 5?
My 5 are the Knicks.
The Knicks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your 5, Gary.
My 5 is the Knicks.
Wait, who was your 6?
6 was Rockets. Sorry. I spoiled it when you mentioned the Rockets.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So let's go back your way, Bentley. Who's your number 4?
Number 4, the best basketball player in the entire world, the Denver Nuggets, and the resurgent Jamal Murray. He was MIA in a lot of the playoffs last year. Granted, it was one round against the Timberwolves. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Most of the first half of the season, pretty below average for him. The last 20 games or so, he's been playing incredibly well. I went based off of vibes and the games I watch for this list, so I don't have the numbers all in front of me. I know Gary has a bunch of numbers for us tonight, and I appreciate that. I don't have those numbers for you. I just know that Jamal Murray is playing so much better the last 3-4 weeks or so than I've seen from him in the last 18 months of basketball. The Russell Westbrook fit on this team is one of the more surprising things, in my opinion. A non-shooter playing with Jokic and Christian Brown.
Good.
Yeah, he's playing incredibly well, right? Which is it shouldn't have been surprising because that's kind of what he does. He just plays good basketball. It's not always winning basketball, but he's playing good basketball, right? Just solid fundamental stuff. And they have the best player in the world, right? And Michael Malone, coach, has a championship. He's coached his player to 3 MVPs, potentially. No, he won his third. So he has 3 MVPs. And then, I'm just not going to bet against Jokic. I'm just not going to. I can't do it. I felt disrespectful putting them as low on my list, honestly.
Yeah, they're at 4 for me. I nearly moved them up to 3, and I had a conversation with myself about putting them at 2. Jokic, and you mentioned Jamal Murray. He's been phenomenal the last 3 weeks. And if that's the Jamal Murray we get in the playoffs, that's the Jamal Murray we saw when they went and won a title. He's a big difference maker for them because he's a guy that can go one-on-one. He can facilitate, but doesn't have to. He can get his own bucket. He's a big and when he's healthy and feeling good, he's also very engaged on the defensive end, which helps a ton. This Nuggets team, if this is Jamal Murray we get in the Western Conference playoffs, I'd probably have them way too low on my power rankings. Ryan, talk to me about the Nugs.
Well, I have them in the same spot, so I guess I have them as the top of this tier of teams, and then I have a separate tier for the other ones. But yeah, I think y'all all kind of hit on it. As the lineups compress, I expect the Nuggets to be a pretty tough out. Given 40 plus minutes of Jokic every night is just tough for any team to handle. There's not a lot of teams, period, that can compete with that. I do think the Russell Westbrook fit has been interesting when him and Jokic play together. We've talked about that before. I do think guys like Julian Strawther have added a guy who I didn't like in the draft, but has with Jokic makes a lot of sense as a spot up guy with some length. I feel good about him. I think they have arguably the best offense in the league, arguably, depending on how you look at that, and a middling defense. So that's why I put them just above the Knicks, because I think their offense is better, and I think their defense is comparable. So that's kind of my thought process there.
I like it. Ryan, let's go back to you. Who's your number 3?
I think we all have the same top 3. We'll see if they're exactly the same. I have the Cavs at 3.
Okay.
Again, this is my next tier. This is the favorites tier, I guess, is like favorites to go to the conference finals here and to the finals. I like the Cavs a lot. I think they're constructed in a really interesting way. They basically completed the Portland Trailblazers vision that they had many years ago with CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard as like a smaller backcourt, but they just couldn't figure out the front court. Cleveland did the exact same thing, but had the front court to match with it. I think they have the shooters. Their role players are great. We've talked about them so many times. I won't go into all of them, but they got guys at the 3 and the 2 and the 4 that can pretty much play all of those positions, and they can throw lots of lineups at you. They did get rid of Gorgeous Niang, which was upsetting, but he's one of my favorite players. But I think this is arguably the second most well-rounded team in the league. That's kind of where I have them, but again, it's arguable. I think they're third probably at worst, but I think they can beat you defensively. They can beat you offensively. They can throw a lot of looks at you. DeAndre Hunter adds a lot to him, right? If he's healthy, he's going to look really good with the facilitation. He's not going to have to do a lot, right? Which I think will optimize him. Guys like Sam Merrill can contribute. Ty Jerome's looked all world. I mean, they can just throw so much at you, different looks. And Donovan Mitchell can win series on his own. We've seen that before. And Darius Garland is getting to where he almost looks like that too. You get a good Evan Mobley series, you're going to be an Eastern Conference final team. That's all you really need. Their floor is very high.
The floor is the roof?
Yeah.
The ceiling is the roof. Come on, Gary. That guy said that.
I know. Bentley, talk to me about the Cavs. How do you feel about Ryan having them at 3?
That's cool. I have him at 2. I don't think it's any shock that I have him at 2. I think I'm maybe Gary, definitely your dad. I may be the biggest this version of Cleveland's fan on this show. I definitely am the biggest Darius Garland fan on this show. The reason I have them above what I assume everybody has as number 2 in Boston is I just look throughout history of professional sports, mainly the NBA, and you have the hunter versus the hunted, right? Hungry dogs run the fastest, like whatever cliche you want to put, right? This is now a Cleveland team who is the hungriest in the Eastern Conference. Boston is a team that just won an NBA championship. They sent 3 of their guys to the fucking Olympics. They won a gold cup or a gold medal. Sorry, I have hockey on. I'm thinking Stanley Cup. And so now they are being chased by this Cleveland team, right? And Ryan said perfectly, they're one of the most well-rounded teams in the league. They have the two guards who can carry throughout stretches of games, even series, right? We've seen it from Donovan Mitchell. I believe that Darius Garland has that ability. We know they have the front court depth and talent in Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. They had, I thought, a really, really good trade deadline. I know Gorgeous Niang is gone, but you bring over DeAndre Hunter. I just think this team is really good, and I'm excited to see where they go in the playoffs. And I spoiler, I have them above Cleveland or above Boston. I think they probably have the best chance to come out of the East going forward.
Yeah, I actually have them coming out of. I have them winning the title based on these power rankings. I have them at number 1 right now, and I think it's very nip tuck between the top 3. I know you both are probably going to have the Thunder at 1. I've got the Cavs at 1. Biggest thing for me right now is they're top 10 in every efficiency rating, the top 10 in pace, and they are the only team right now that ranks in the top 5 in field goal percentage in the paint, mid-range field goal percentage, and 3-point percentage. And for me, that's a thing that really changes a playoff series when you can threaten at all 3 levels with that level of efficiency. And Ryan mentioned it first. You seconded it. Donovan Mitchell can win a series by himself. We've seen it in the past. We've seen him win multiple series in a single playoff run, basically on his own. That guy, give me that guy against any team in the East when it comes to a playoff series, especially with what he's got supporting him with Darius Garland, who is absolutely coming into his own as a budding star / potential superstar in this league, and the Twin Towers. And I love the move for DeAndre Hunter. I think that he's a guy that really gives them more versatility when it comes to rotation. His ability to play at both ends and be a guy who can score in the spot up. I love what this Cavs team has in terms of the length of the roster, the way they can rotate, and how all of the pieces complement each other, and how efficient they are on both ends of the floor. I've got the Cavs at number 1 right now.
I like that.
Can I say I was the number 1 preseason Cavs supporter? I from the beginning said this team was going to be good.
Yep.
I just wanted to. Yeah, I don't want some Bentley stolen valor in me right now.
You were right.
I took the over in the win total.
I did too.
I think we all did, but I think I said they were a top 3 team in the East.
Hey.
I remember.
I'm not trying to step on any toes.
Clearly you are. You've deeply offended me.
Ryan only ever talks about the Rockets, and I know that Gary likes Cleveland, so I'm not going to give myself more credit than Gary, but I will gladly step over Ryan, just like Ty Lue. Like,
you're Allen Iverson.
I'm Allen Iverson.
Yeah, the height is similar. So
both from Virginia. That's what I was going with there, but that's
okay. My bad.
One from the peninsula.
Right.
You got a question? I'm the answer, motherfucker. Like,
what's up? All right. Well, let's clean up number 3. So I'm assuming Bentley and I both have the Celtics at number 3. Bentley, I'll let you go first. Talk to me about Celtics.
They're really, really good. They've actually been playing better recently than they did to start out the season. I think there was some fatigue from those guys that I mentioned going. They had a deep playoff run, and they sent 3 of their starters to play in the Olympics. Porzingis coming off of surgery. Yeah, a ton of basketball. Porzingis coming off an off-season surgery, so they worked him back into the lineup. They're playing super, super well. I'd say right now they're the best team in the East. I know that we all love Cleveland equally. All of us together, the same amount, have a lot of respect for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just have a little more respect for Darius Garland than you guys do, but Cleveland as a whole, we all equally respect. I think that right now, like, they're probably better than Cleveland, but we just had the All-Star break. We just had the trade deadline. They're going to be implementing new minutes, new rotations into the season. I think down the stretch, Cleveland is probably a better team than is Boston. I truly believe in that hunter versus the hunted thing. like the hungry team, dude. Like they make the plays in crunch time. They die for the loose balls. They get on the floor. And Boston, I said this last year. I said it earlier in the show too. Like, I believe that they won that championship last year because they were the most talented team on the court and not because they had the best championship mentality. I still feel that way about this team.
I agree with you, and that's why I had them below the Cavs, and it came down to Cavs Thunder for me in terms of ranking 1-2. I don't know that I see that same. It is that Hunter hunted, the hunger to win, and you got the extra minutes. And Porzingis, is he going to be 100% by the playoffs? He looks fine, but he was a difference maker for them last season. How close to 100% are you going to get him? And then having won a championship, are you really that hungry to repeat? Maybe, but that's a question that I don't know that I can answer right now on February 20th. I think their talent carries them to the Eastern Conference Finals. I just don't know that they're going to have that oomph to get over the hump against the Cavs team in the Eastern Conference Finals and get back to an NBA championship. Ryan, talk to us about the Celts. I'm guessing you have them at 2?
Yeah, I have them at 2. I think what y'all said makes a lot of sense to me. I had them over the Cavs because of the experience, much more experience at the high levels, not just in their championship season, but the group of Tatum and Brown and even guys like Horford have had a lot of runs in the playoffs. Again, when things shorten up, this team, I don't know how you defend them, right? 5 out. They can do everything to you offensively. They can shoot anybody out of the gym, right? Like, there is variability. And I talked about this before when we said who's the most likely to come out of the East. And we talked about between Boston and Cleveland like a month or two ago. And I said Boston. I also said that their variability is higher. Cleveland's floor is higher. Boston's floor might be lower because they're such a shooting team, but they are so good at it, right? Like, you're going to have to catch them on 2 bad shooting nights to beat them in a series. Like that, I think that's the only way that they lose. They shoot 32% in 2 games, and then you beat them 2 games in a regular fashion. So I just think the shooting ability is as elite as the NBA has ever seen from an entire team, even more than the Warriors. They can do it at every level. They can do it from every position. They do it with length. They can test you with length on the perimeter. They do it around the basket. They play well. They're a very heady team, coached well. They can throw funky stuff at you because the coach likes to throw funky stuff at you. And then sometimes, again, they can just shoot 53s in a game and kill you. I'm impressed offensively so much, and they're good defensively too, right? They're probably a top 5 defense as well, which is a formula for a championship.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have the Thunder at 2, but I'm going to leave the floor to you folks because you both have them at number 1. So I'm going to let you heap praise on this Thunder team. And I'm going to explain how I flipped a coin and came up with Cavs over Thunder, because these are both 2 fucking tremendous teams. Bentley, we'll go your way first about the Thunder. Talk to me. You got them at 2, or you got them at 1. I've got them at 2. Talk to me about why you have them as the top team right now as things stand.
Well, they're going to shoot the most free throws in any game they play, so that's a given. They're going to draw the most fouls because that's just what SGA does. He's a free throw merchant who's playing at an MVP level. And you combine the 2 of those things and you have a basically unstoppable force, right? SGA, arguably one of the 4 best players. I mean, wherever you want to rank Giannis, Jokic, Luka, SGA, right? Like those are kind of like your upper echelon of dudes right now. I said earlier in the show, a commonality between championship winning teams is that they have one of those guys on their team, and SGA is one of those guys. And then you get to the rest of the roster, and it's like, man, they could run a platoon system and run out 5 more guys, and not quite be as good as the starting five, but like their defense may be better with the second team on the court than it would be with the first team on the court. There's not really a weakness amongst this team. The Cason Wallace, like 3-point shooting display that he has put on since he got drafted was something that I was not prepared for, having watched him in college.
Didn't have it on my bingo card.
Yeah, like he is all of a sudden a really, really good 3-point shooter, especially from the corners. And I'm like, you didn't do that at Kentucky, but you could do it when you move like 1,000 miles to the west.
And you move the line farther back.
Yeah, I didn't really see that one coming, but I don't know. They just have so much talent, and Mark Daigneault. I know I'm beating a dead horse when I say one of my favorite coaches. Mark Daigneault goes without saying one of the best coaches in the NBA.
Ryan has a lot of top 4 teams in the West. You have a lot of one of the best coaches in the league.
I do. Yeah, I have like 7 one of the best coaches in the league. And it starts with Eric Spoelstra, and then it works down from there.
Yeah, there are a lot of good coaches in the league, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time on that because I know you and Ryan want to talk about it too. But they have the least amount of holes, I think, of any team in the NBA.
Ryan, Thunder, number 1.
Yeah, I had him number 1. Like I said, all I will highlight, because we could talk about them all day, because there's so many angles that you could, which is why they're so powerful. But this might be the best modern defense, basically since the 3-point era has been a thing. This might be the greatest defense that's been assembled. There's an argument that their best defensive player is not playing, and they're by far the best defense in the league. That's just what they do. They guard you at every level with defenders. I mean, SGA is probably like the 8th best defender on the team. And he, I think, leads the league in steals, or leads his team in steals. I know he leads the team in steals, but I think he's up there in the league too. Because he's a defensive playmaker, not necessarily lockdown, man-to-man defender. But people don't realize, like, this team will shut you down, and you'll feel terrible about it. And they're still a top 5 offense. But I believe the separation of their defense is so much better than everyone else's that their offense is close enough to the Boston, the Cleveland, the Knicks, the Nuggets. Not as good. I think all those offenses are better to some extent, but the defense is just so much better. This is like 04 Piston level of defense. Like, people are not talking about it like that. At least not like buddies are not talking about it like that, because we typically don't talk about defense. But this might be the best defense I've ever seen as an adult, which is 15 years now. So it's just an incredible thing to me to watch. They can throw bodies at you, just like Bentley said. Their backups are great defenders. Chet Holmgren's not playing, like I said. He's arguably their most impactful defender, and he's not playing at all. Hardenstein is a solid defender. He's doing a good job, holding in. Dort, Cason Wallace is obviously a great defender. He's got massive long arms. He looks like Donovan Mitchell out there with how long his arms are. Jalen Williams is an incredible defender, one of the best 2-way guys in the league. One of my favorite players. As I've said, I would take him over Paolo Banchero in a draft. I know he hates that. I'm just so impressed every time I watch him with what they do defensively, and I don't think we talk about it enough. Just one of the best ever I've seen.
Yeah,
they're 4 points more efficient.
I actually was just about to say that.
Oh, sorry.
Number 2 is literally 4 points behind them. So your point is very, very well made, Ryan, that they are just that much better than everybody else, essentially, when it comes to defensive efficiency. Yeah, I mean, I can't find reasons to disagree with why you guys have them at number 1. I think the biggest thing for me is with the Cavs, I think that I just look at the way that they can score at all 3 levels in a playoff series. I think that they can overcome some of what they would face in an NBA championship against this OKC team from a defensive perspective. And the Cavs are very, very good defensively. I don't know that they're going to get in the same sort of foul trouble that teams get in a lot against SGA. So that's kind of where, like, for me, the defense is obviously a nod for OKC. I just think the balance that the Cleveland Cavaliers have in terms of being able to score at all three levels and how efficient they are and how well they shoot the ball. That was really like the coin flip piece for me to put the Cavs over the Thunder. But I literally have no qualms with, them being number one for you guys.
They're great.
Well, cool. Real quick, I want to go around. Is there anyone that wasn't in the top 10 that you want to shout out as like, this was really hard for me not to put them in? This is a team I think if they get hot at the right time could win a championship. I know a couple of teams have been mentioned, but I want to give an opportunity here to like give some flowers. Ryan, I'll go your way first. Is there a team that sits outside your top 10 that you were like, man, it's tough for me to put them outside of the top 10?
I mean, Lakers, Mavs, I already talked about. Both those teams could very easily be a conference final team, right, in a good situation. I just don't know because of the changes that have happened, both of them to each other. So the other one that is not mentioned, and they have not looked good, but they have a pretty good players. The Phoenix Suns, I do not feel good about them. I feel like they're a bottom half of the league team as currently play. But if they were able to get in, again, no one wants to face Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, right? Like that's just not. You don't know what's going to come out of that. I don't feel like they're going to be one, but they're a team that I won't count out. And then obviously the Magic, when healthy, another great defense. They just got to be able to score the ball just enough to beat teams. And I think that's a team that could. So those would be my kind of throw-ins.
Bentley?
Yeah, I was going to go with Phoenix as well. Gary and I were talking about Kevin Durant earlier today. Just that's a guy no team wants to see in a playoff series whatsoever. Giannis gets a little lucky because Kevin Durant wears shoes that are too big for him. They end up, obviously going on to beat Devin Booker in the NBA Finals to win that championship. There is one other team, however, that if they get hot, which they're 29th right now in offensive efficiency in the NBA, but they're number 2 in defense in the league. And Gary said it earlier that defense wins championships. The Orlando Magic. Paolo got hurt. Franz got hurt. They made no moves at the deadline, but they were incredibly good at the beginning of the season. Why not? Why not them? They can shut down just about any not shut down. They can tamper just about any offense, right? Just something to keep an eye on. Future league MVP Paolo Banchero could carry this team to the promised land.
Yeah, the Warriors were tough for me only because like I would like to see one more run for Steph. I just don't know that like are we gonna get playoff Jimmy? Are we gonna like Ryan said about the Mavs and the Lakers, like projecting and saying yes, we're gonna get that was tough for me. I do want to shout one team out that I'm not going to say I was even considering them for the top 10 in power rankings, but I'm gonna eat a little bit of crow. And I'm going to give Ryan a little bit of flowers here on the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham has been healthy, effective. He's been the number 1 pick that he was coming out of college, that he hasn't been to this point in his career. That's a pretty well-constructed roster with regards to the fact that, like, I didn't know what the hell they were doing for the last 3 years, in terms of what they were throwing at the wall when it comes to roster construction. But they currently sit at 29-26, 3 games over 500 this late in the season, for the first time since the Pistons that Ryan mentioned. The Ben Wallace, super efficient defensive. They've been a bad team for a long time. It's good for them, good for the city of Detroit, good for an historic franchise. They're currently on a 4-game win streak going into the All-Star break. And Cade Cunningham, like I said, he's been just fucking tremendous. And he's killing it with his ability to just be a stat stuffer across the board, and finally making good on what the potential was for a guy that went number 1 overall, despite not being on a great college team, kind of in that Ben Simmons mold. And, the OK State was not great. Markelle Fultz, right, on that Washington team that was 9 wins in college. But he's been tremendous this year. The Pistons have overachieved. I was very, very wrong about them. I thought they were going to be cellar dwellers again. So I'll eat that crow, and I'll give Ryan his flowers because he was very steadfast against me when it comes to Cade Cunningham and the Detroit Pistons.
Now, Gary, why do you think that Cade Cunningham, a kid who had enough talent to go number 1 overall in the NBA draft, went to a school like Oklahoma State? Do you think that T. Boone Pickens may have gotten a hold of this young man at a young age?
Yeah, the world's richest man not in the tech sphere.
Look, I'm not here to accuse.
Yeah. Pre-NIL too, man. I mean,
so I just find it even more strange, right? Like, certainly he was not afforded any liberties or cash payments. Couldn't have been.
I'm sure he lived pretty well in Stillwater.
I choose to think he's just a big Mike Gundy fan.
Maybe.
Could have been a Marcus Smart fan.
Have.
Maybe.
I will say Detroit much closer to the top 10 than the bottom 10 currently.
Yes.
That's they're near the top half of the league, which is honestly great for them.
Yeah, very much so. All right, well, closing thoughts here. One, I want to say go Team USA, despite the fact we're down 1 right now to Canada. Nate McKinnon gets Canada on the board, but I'd love to hear some Freebird at the end of the night because that has become the anthem for the United States hockey team during this 4 Nations tournament. I love what the NHL is doing with this All-Star break. I know it's not going to be an every year thing. It is like an every 4 staggered with the Olympics, and then we've also got the hockey, whatever other thing that they do. So there's a lot of national tournaments in the hockey sphere. This has been great. It's been electric, but we need a comeback tonight. Bentley, any closing thoughts here as we sign off?
No, not particularly. I would like to give a shout out to the University of Illinois. I don't know if you guys caught this. They retired Terry Shannon Jr.'s jersey over the weekend, or was it? I don't know. Whatever their last home game was. They did so in kind of rapid fashion because they really screwed him last year. He was falsely accused of some really heinous stuff. And then the due diligence did its part, and it came out that he was innocent, but the school suspended him from the active roster, so he missed games last year, ended up getting drafted, whatever, water under the bridge. But they retired his jersey, and I saw it on Twitter, and I thought it was a joke at first.
But it was
photoshopped. They removed the cover from the banner, and it's literally hanging upside down. So he went out and got T-shirts made that said like jersey retired or whatever, and it was upside down. So it was all in good fun, and I'm sure they fixed it. But shout out to University of Illinois. They're going to lose this Saturday against Duke, but that was a funny moment for them. So that was funny to me.
That was hilarious. I legitimately, like you, I thought it was fake. I thought it was photoshopped, but I went to a bunch of sources, and every one of them, it was upside down. I couldn't believe it.
I thought maybe like there was like they were like holding it from the bottom of the thing, and then they were going to pull the cables up. That didn't happen. I was like,
no, it didn't. No, it didn't.
I'm surprised they did that at all. He didn't play there that long.
No,
but it was like a recompense thing.
Yeah,
because they really screwed him last year.
Yeah, they did. Ryan, any closing thoughts for you?
No, I have Illinois beating Duke, so the best freshman in the country plays for Illinois. So,
ooh, spicy take. Poking the bear.
Just kidding. I mean, I do have them beating, but I'm kidding about the freshman part. He is like the third best.
Sorry to take us off track one more time. Jabari Smith Jr., 21 years old. Does anyone know the average starting age of the or the average age of the players on the Auburn Tigers current roster?
24.
Close. It's close.
Aren't they like 22 and a half?
Yeah, 22 is the average age of the Clemson or of the Auburn Tigers basketball team right now.
That's a lot of portal wins and a lot of longevity. AARP is strong in Auburn.
Chad Baker Mazzara, their second best player, older than Luka Doncic.
Jesus
Yep.
Christ. Playing college.
Hey, get your free college, man.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Man.
Yep.
Mid-20s and still enjoying them co-eds, I'm sure.
Well, he's there for basketball, Gary.
Oh, yeah.
And education.
Yeah. Yeah, the historically high educational institution that is Auburn.
Yep. Charles Barkley went there, so
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
a high level of.
Yeah, he knows a lot about the state or the city of San Antonio. But...
He does, yeah. Me and him, me and Chuck. Thick as thieves out there on the Riverwalk. Let me tell you what.
All right, well, on that note, we'll get out of here. For Ryan and for Bentley, this has been another episode of Backyard Buckets brought to you by Backyard Sports. We are out.